Hey everyone, I'm Brett.
And I'm Molly. Welcome to our podcast.
Let's be curious together. Today we're talking about something that's a little different, a little interesting. We talked about, touched briefly in our last episode, but that's, our neurodivergence.
Yeah.
And kind of how that flushes out in our marriage. And I know it's not something that we necessarily even realized that we had, that we were neurodivergent. We were different for a bunch of other symptoms and reasons, but a little odd. Maybe we're like, okay, but how many years in was it when we finally figured out that we were neurodivergent?
I think it was only about 3 years ago.
Was it that? I think
so
it's
about
longer
7
than
years
that.
in. You think
Really?
it was longer?
I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Maybe you.
Oh, for me.
Maybe for you.
me it was longer. Yeah, for you it wasn't as long.
I don't know if it was quite that long ago. Yeah. You want us to talk about you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to gather information, just think about what this is for me, because it's been a really interesting self-discovery journey. I think a lot of ADHD, autism individuals are self-diagnosed a lot of times, because we can go from childhood to adulthood, and there's a lot of people on the spectrum of intensity of autism or ADHD. And I think for me, I was never diagnosed.
Well, a lot of people in the right conditions learn how to mask.
They do.
It's the term mask really well, right? And so they learn how to, and what we basically do is like mimic social behaviors. We don't really understand social cues or behaviors, but we learn how to like mimic really, really well.
Create some kind of construct that
Which is why so many people go undiagnosed.
Right. It feels safe, it's doable, it's patterned, it's not very deep.
Right.
But I definitely can relate to growing up as a kid. I was like really, really daydreamy, really head in the clouds. I was not considered the smart one of the sisters. The more academically smart one, rather. And I don't think that my family really had a lot of like high hopes for my achievement, but I was considered the kid who was super creative, just like sitting in the corner playing, and we would go out in the woods and just make stuff, and I had my own little strengths, but I think most of all I flew under the radar. I think I grew up in a house where we traveled a lot, and our basic needs were taken care of. We had loving parents, let's just say. But I don't think that I felt like I had a voice to really be a problem. And I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so, for whatever reason, I'm not trying to point fingers at all, but that was just my reality. And I grew up, being told, you're so good, you're so, life with you has been so great. And I think as a little girl, I just, didn't know how to piece together what I was feeling, where we were going with it, and why I, felt the certain things. But as an adult, having daughters, I've actually been able to unpack what my experience was as a little girl. And this whole autism ADHD spectrum thing came up, and it was just such a fit for me. And like, I definitely fit in with it. I definitely recognized it. I definitely related to it.
Not even fit in with it. It's like finally getting the owner's manual to yourself.
That's how it feels.
It was like you're like, oh wow, that's why this and that's why that, and this is, and now I'm finally like understanding my brain chemistry, and if I just do this, then this works. And it's like you start like treating, we see all the symptoms and we're like, that's me 100%, right? And like the self-diagnosis process, and then you like start to try some of the disciplines that are prescribed for neurodivergence, and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm finally getting somewhere, you know.
So I was a little bit hesitant to talk about this because when, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, like middle school, high school, this term ADHD or autism was a very serious thing, and it was something that kept kids from being normal. It was something that was something like clinically wrong.
It was just emerging, really, though, even on the scene. Like, it was.
There were a lot of unknowns about it, and I never thought that I was that person at all, and I wasn't expressing it then. But I just want to say, when I have a little bit of like a hump to get over when talking about this for myself, because it was always seen as like, oh no, it's a death sentence, or oh, it's a problem, oh, it's a disability. It was always, you know, referred to as a disability, but I actually see it, and I know you do too, as it's just a brain chemistry matter. It's just this is how I'm wired. And I'm very grateful that I have been high functioning with it my whole life. And I can definitely say that I haven't had any real problems because of it. Like, you know.
What do you mean by real problems?
Well, I haven't had to, like, I haven't been stripped of any privilege. I haven't been, no opportunities have been stolen from me. I got into the second best accounting school in the nation.
Sure.
But, you know, I had my own achievements. Yeah. I had great provision for my life. Yeah. And
externally, nothing was
100% externally.
You were making it.
Yes.
Right.
But it was the internal world that was going to hell.
And the definition of high functioning, I mean, and most people don't realize this when they think of neurodivergent, and high functioning neurodivergent means, by definition, someone who has learned to mask their symptoms. It doesn't mean that.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't mean high functioning doesn't mean, oh, they're a less severe case. It means they have learned to mimic and mask their condition to appear normal, like society expects them to. So it's usually not a better internal world.
Yes.
It's just you've learned to put on enough of a mask for the.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. When was like the earliest you could remember yourself just being different, thinking different, you know, like, and thinking, why am I like this? You know,
I always had conflict was the problem. And I always had this like internal, I am innately flawed, or there's something wrong with me, or I grew up not understanding sarcasm, and the social cues thing was totally me. It was just not on my radar. I was a very literal communicator, and I still am. I try really hard to understand sarcasm, but I just, whatever, I don't really like it anyway. But I noticed socially, like in social settings, and it wasn't just because I was the youngest, you know, it wasn't just because I was the little sister. Like there were a lot of social settings where I definitely felt like I was on the outs, and I would find myself studying people like we see our girls do now. I would study people, and I know that's not quite normal. I would be just gathering information, trying to figure them out is the thing. Like I could not match or pair myself with people. And I'm a huge empath, but there wasn't this likeness. And I was homeschooled. I was a missionary kid, so there may be a little bit of that in there too.
Some of those boxes checked for you as well.
Categorizations. But when it comes to like just understanding girls my age or guys at all, you know, I just didn't. It was just not there. Yeah. And I felt like I just was studying constantly.
And that's like something I think that's worth noting. You know, and obviously we've learned more of the terminology for it now. But I was in a very similar boat, you know, very, very similar. And it's neurodivergents become experts at pattern recognition.
Yes.
Right. Pattern recognition and like mimicry, you know, of some type, right? It's like the especially in the worlds of like cliches and small talk and social cues and things like that, it's just like doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up, especially when people are lying or being inconsistent or, you know, aren't so, because we see all the details, right? It's like I think of I don't remember what the name of the movie is. There's this guy, you know, who's just like seeing everything, doesn't want to Limitless, right? He's just like seeing all the details of everything.
The one about the drugs.
Whatever. But you get what I'm saying. Like his brain's working on a different level, and he can't help but notice every detail.
Every detail.
Right. It's just like, it's like the fire hose is on full blast.
Yes.
And whether you want it to or not. Yep. And in many ways, I feel like that's similar to how our brains are. Like every single piece of information is being picked up. And so we like, you know, interacting with people, and people are inconsistent. And so you see people body language is saying one thing, words are saying another, facial expressions saying one thing. And I think like neurodivergents are probably the best human lie detectors. But then it's confusing because you're like, the whole group unanimously is saying one thing, and they're like, why aren't you saying the same thing as us? You're like, because none of you are, like, there's so many inconsistencies. I don't know how to rationalize the inconsistencies.
Yeah.
So I'm going to...
Cannot compute.
Right? Doesn't make sense.
Nope.
Right? And so we're just like, okay, I'm just going to pretend to be like you.
Yes.
I'm going to, I'm going to
try to make you more comfortable by behaving a certain way other than calling out your BS. So any of my friends that will ever listen to this podcast will know that I'm the one who hits the heart and hits the root if I'm given permission to go there. And sometimes I go without permission, but in just deeper conversations about life in general, I know how to get to the root, and I believe it's a gift. But it's that very same thing is we see the bigger picture, and we see the deeper things. That's just the bottom line. Right. But with women in particular, so women are underdiagnosed, obviously. I think the stats show that men are a lot higher diagnosed in autism and ADHD than women are. Women are more likely to mask and more likely to kind of fall under the radar with things. And symptoms, I thought this was interesting, symptoms experienced by women are more internal than external. So men with their ADHD, they live a little bit more outside of their body with it. But the women, it can be this whole inner world. And I really resonated when I read that, because that was definitely me. And it still is me, let's be honest. But trying to be a little more open. Yeah. Especially with you. Like I talk with you all the time about it. But just being a little more honest in conversations with my weirdness and with the off the beaten path thought pattern that I might have, just being willing to just share it. Right. Even though it totally like is a left-hand turn off the train tracks, for a lot of conversations. But it can often be, this is interesting because it can often be just confused with anxiety or depression in women. So I know I went through like a depressive state in high school, in college and whatever, but it can often be just confused for anxiety or depression when really it's a brain construct that has just not been acknowledged or recognized.
Yeah. But I mean, legitimately, it can be depressing when your brain is feeding you all this information that tells you one thing, but people are saying you're wrong, it's something else, but and you're in this like conflict of, no, like I know this is the way this should be happening, or this is what is actually going on, and other people are like, no, it's not, and you're like, no, it is, and it's like, man, I'm broken. I must just be broken because I'm definitely, everything in me is telling me it's this, but people are telling me it's something else, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, like where do we go from here? Yeah. I also grew up with that similar stigma that was around it, of being a negative disability.
Your brother's teacher said something about him and your parents freaked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Something similar about something.
It wasn't too bright. They're saying basically the teacher was like, he's not too bright.
Well, maybe that was different.
It doesn't really have it was from his neurodivergency, right? They didn't.
Oh, he's 100%. Yes.
Yes. It was from his neurodivergency that was happening, and his learning style was very different than typical, right? Which is standard, typical for neurodivergence, that we have a very different learning technique. But his ability to mask and get on board with other... He
lived a very different expression that did not fit into school.
Right.
Yes.
So...
Yeah. Do you ever question if you had ever been, like, diagnosed or given into the hands of a therapist or something like that? Like, do you ever question what life would be like if you had talked to a therapist, like, early on about this kind of thing? Or if you had gotten the...
Probably nothing would be different. Knowing my family.
Slap you on some meds.
No, they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, your parents wouldn't have put you on medication.
No, I have several neurodivergents in my family.
I know.
Undiagnosed neurodivergence in my family.
We're coming for you.
which just is that much...
All will be revealed in time.
When people don't know they are and they're undiagnosed, and you just...
Well, they probably don't give a crap.
But when you don't know that you are and you're undiagnosed, you don't realize it. You know what I mean? Like, and your kids are a little quirky too, and you're quirky, and it's just like, that's just how everyone is.
We're
you know?
special.
Right. Yeah. And like growing up in a family of neurodivergence too, I was like shocked culture, you know, in a sense of how other people, because it was just like, other people must just be weird. Like they must just have weird families. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And
they do.
Because the norm for me was really weird, right? Like the baseline.
Define. There are so many, like every family has their culture, right? I think there's a cultural weird, and then there's a hardwiring weird. You know, your family, for instance, is extremely loud.
Yes.
And you guys are all like pack rats. So I think the pack rat thing is a symptom.
Maybe, yeah.
We could talk about
a
that
lot of
another
them
time.
are, but also like, you know, hyper focusing.
Yes.
Right. A lot of quick jumps and hyper focuses. You know, it's like
rabbit trails.
Oh, hey, you know, like just rabbit trails.
Rabbit trails every 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds in a conversation, you cannot share more than one internal thought with your family before they're moving on to another subject, and you do not matter anymore.
Yes. Now I'll take this as both like something of neurodivergence and maybe not, but I remember my family was always like, we're really quick to forgive, like have conflict resolution and forgive, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a conflict happens, we're like, oh man, that's not right, let's deal with it, and then we move past it, and then we forget about it. And I was always like, that's just the thing, like you forgive and you forget. And then I realized like, oh wait, we literally are forgetting, like short-term memory gone. Oh,
okay, so let's talk tangibles. Yes.
I am talking tangibles.
Yes.
That is tangible.
I know. Let's talk a little bit more like maybe framework of what neurodivergence, ADHD, autism. Yeah.
So I love this. If you don't mind me saying this one first.
Okay.
There's a I don't remember his name. There's a doctor who's a specialist in the field of ADHD. I really love his description of ADHD, so I just want to share it real quick.
Okay.
Neurodivergence. And he said he doesn't call it, he's a clinical doctor. He said he doesn't call his patients a disability. He describes it to them, whether they're kids or adults, as a Formula One race car. And that's what he's like. He's like, your brain is like a Formula One race car. He's like, it is incredible. It can do things that like no other vehicle can do. It can, you know, go impressively fast. You know, it can high performing. He's like, but you cannot put any gas you want in there. You can't have just anyone servicing. He's like, you have to be very particular about how you care for and what you put in this car for it to be able to perform like a supercar. He's like, if you treat it like a Honda Civic, it will crash and burn, and you will be like, well, then it looks like a disability. He's like, then when it's hopping along, you know, struggling to get through, that's when it looks like a disability. It's because you haven't been in the right, you know, disciplines, the right eating, the right, you know, setup of how you structure your life. It's like, that's when it looks like a disability, but it's really a superpower.
I love that. Highly accurate. We're getting wiser, and we can talk about that in a minute. So I just want to say my family also majorly undiagnosed. I think there's this whole field of people that acknowledge and see ADHD and how much it's growing and like awareness now. And then there are literally veins of people who have never talked about it before. Sure. And the ones that potentially could have it, it's never been on their radar before. And that baffles my mind. But that's fine. But so for me, when I acknowledge it or when I talk about things like this, I have to like think of my family, because really they have all trudged through their lives and like have been highly successful. And it's almost weird that I am somebody who wants to dive into this, who wants to learn more, self-educate, take care of myself, because nobody else has really acknowledged it. I have had a conversation with my sister, and we have compared notes once or twice, but I have not wanted to go too far into it because I didn't want to scare her. But that conversation is probably coming. But basically, for me, some symptoms that I have kind of just picked out and noticed over the years, I have had such intense auditory overstimulation. on the daily.
Oh, I noticed
And
this like
forever.
when we were just dating.
Amen. Just when we were dating. So this looks like us being in the car. Okay, this still happens, and neither one of us has changed. But this will look like, since dating, us being in the car. He has his music, and he loves his music. He loves his intense. Like, he'll listen to the band Red is one of your favorite bands or whatever that we used to listen to a lot when we were dating. It's like very intense, emotional, like great music, but he wants to listen to that, volume up, and have a conversation at the same time. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I am just completely undone, overstimulated, and I cannot hear his voice because the music's here and his voice is like this undercurrent of, water flowing through, and I cannot hear a word you're saying. Right. And I'm just very upset.
Right.
And I cannot do it. I just can't.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like the kids' voices, like if everybody's talking at the same time, it's literally painful for me. So auditory overstimulation has been a huge symptom of mine throughout my life.
Yep.
And that kind of leads into the sensory overload and hypersensitivity. So being somebody who notices a lot of details, somebody with autism or ADHD, neurodivergence, is really aware of a lot of different details in the moment, and having that just draw of information and energy, and noticing. I've been that way my whole life, and I'll hear things that nobody else acknowledges to hear. I'll hear things without even acknowledging that I hear them. Like the fact that my brain didn't register for years and years. My brain did not register actively that I was taking in all this information, I realized. And then when I started to be a little bit more meditative with life and a little bit more just self-aware in general, I noticed that I was just hearing so much and seeing so much. And like the social cues that you were talking about, receiving all of that information, that's a hypersensitivity. And I realized it is absolutely exhausting if it's on for too long. So if you think about the race car analogy, you speed forward with something, and then you have to actually heavily speed forward, high intensity speed forward, and then high intensity rest, or low intensity rest, rather.
And I think a lot of us, of the people in us, our category of neurodivergence, we're often labeled as extroverted introverts because of this. In the moments of like strength and hyper focus, we're like, we can be outgoing and we're rested. We're
and
like,
ready.
Ooh, hey, look, I can do this, right? Yeah. And but the overload of all the information wears down, right? And exhausts, and like again, keeping that on full blast for so long. Okay, I need to go like quiet, find a quiet spot where I have no stimulation. I have nothing going on, and let my brain rest and myself recover, before I go out and experience life at full speed again, There's no like coasting through life mode. There is like all on, all off.
All on or all off. And that's been totally my life, forever and ever. Hypersensitivity.
And I mean, the music thing was like such a conflict for us because for you it's an overstimulation, right? Because you're more auditorily overstimmed, and I think I'm more visually than auditorily. But for me, I'm not on the like autistic side at all, right? It's just the ADHD, and so the music was for me as a focus thing, like playing music. My brain goes, okay, the distractible side of my brain is like, oh great, I got something to focus on. And then the like executive function part is like, oh, now I can stay fully locked on you. And the creative side that's like running wild all the time is over there playing with the music while I'm here and we're focused. So I'm like playing music so I can be focused, but you're like, I can't focus because you're playing music.
Yes.
And we're like,
yes, this is something that has been consistently different about us.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I really honor that part of you because I think it's great, and it's not a bother at all. But when we come together, we both have to compromise our preferences in that way of just, hey, let's work with what we have. Let's treat our brains kindly and actually just like set ourselves up for success. But success for both of us is a completely different strategy.
Right. Yeah. Instead of blasting like really complex music that I would normally do. We'll lightly play some soothing background music.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like enough
smooth jazz
for me, but it's not too much for you.
Cheers to the smooth jazz. Lo-fi.
Cheers.
Lo-fi study on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Lo-fi, what else? Lo-fi girl. Anyway. So, and the next one totally like relates to our marriage thing, and I was overstimulation is just a typical key for autism, but overstimulated by touch as well. And
that one was so confusing. That one was so confusing when we first got married.
Let's talk about overstimulated by touch and emotional regulation. So I learned that autistic individuals are not great at emotionally regulating. And I cannot believe how accurate this has been for me. As emotional as I am not privy to strategies on how to bring myself down and how to soothe myself. Like literally self-soothing. The
chemistry, biological part of your makeup that would allow you to self-regulate your emotions is missing or broken.
Yes. So Brett is great at this. I learned, like, I couldn't believe how good you are at it. When he's in bed, he literally rubs his feet together like a little cricket. Emotional regulation.
Stims.
And then when I literally learned from you that touching emotionally regulates you, and I have since actually gotten comfortable with using that strategy for myself, and I actually chemically understand it now. For about a year, I think we
understood the science, and so you're like willing to push through some like uncomfortableness.
That has been an area of growth for me. Yes, because emotional regulation is not my strength. Touching is not my strength. It's not just about love languages, okay? It's not just the love language is not my touching, not my love language.
Which can we just like sidetrack for just a second on that? It was one of the things that was really confusing, like in marriage for us for a while. For me,
cover story.
Because you would take these tests, and depending on where you were in your stim, you would test differently. Like your love languages test would say this when you were feeling like really good, but then in times when you're feeling stressed or overstimmed, your like results would be totally different.
That's why it's a flawed approach.
Right. It works for people who are, more or less consistent and neurotypical.
Oh yes, for sure.
So the neurodivergence, like one moment you're like, oh hey, I love you so much, and then the one's like, don't even come close to me, and I'm like, what did I do?
Well, for me, I don't know that I was ever like, oh hey, I love you so much.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It was just unpredictable.
Okay. I mean, that's fair.
At the beginning, before we like started to understand all this, it was like, what?
I mean, I did kiss you first, let's be honest. So, but actually like receiving the chemical reward for this like touch language and this touch strategy, using it more as a chemical strategy for the body, I just started understanding this, and I actually just am able to tap into the relief that I feel when we're like, say, just like watching TV, we're laying in bed and I put my leg over your leg or something like that, and our skin is touching. That touching, I am literally just now realizing how soothing it is for my body.
Or just holding hands, or just like an arm around your shoulder.
Well,
like
that's
just something.
That one's never. I don't know.
Okay. I'm just saying, it's like sometimes it's just so simple.
Yes.
Like, it's
just so simple, but it's the contact, the human contact thing, and you have taught me so much because you've been there to help me develop this skill of emotional regulation in this specific facet. Do you know what I mean? And so that's been cool. But some other symptoms that I've had, just...
No, but before, like...
you want to move on?
I feel like you're just kind of like...
Yeah, I'm going on the list.
Flying through this. Like,
I made a list.
I know you did.
Go for it. Take it.
I'm just, thinking through in our relationship. Mm-hmm. When was the first time in our relationship that you saw something... Maybe you didn't know it was neurodivergence yet, or ADHD or whatever, but like you were like, you saw something in me that you were like, what is that?
I mean, day one.
Go ahead.
It's half joke, half not. So when that one day at church when we were talking to each other and you like stopped me before I ran out the door.
When you were running out the door and I chased after you.
No, before I left. No, that was a different time. So that was when your girlfriend was hanging on your arm and like intimidated by us talking. We were talking and I was wearing the green and white houndstooth blazer that I loved. Okay, I remember this. Yeah. And we were talking and you literally had like crusty like things on your face. Like you rolled out of bed. You showed up late. I could tell that you really probably woke up like 10 minutes ago. Do you know what I mean? And I judged you so much already. But little did I know that was your body's biological clock. Not biological clock. Internal clock sleeping in. And literally you not being a morning person is not just a preference. It's not just your it's not
laziness.
No. And I judged it as laziness, and then now I realize like how we talked about it last time, how you literally have your shining moments in the day and your shining creative moments
at night
where you're showing your brilliance and where you're like so inspired to be creative are 2 a.m., 10 p.m. And
it's like from sundown until 2. From sundown until 2.
Yeah. So anyway, that was just a little one, and I learned later what it was. And what I judged you for laziness, but I realized it was just you. You know what I mean? Mm. And that's such a funny thing to think about, because this level of ADHD that you have or whatever, it's just, you can't judge people. You really can't. Sometimes you can. But you can't judge people about where they're at or where, like,
the irony of neurodivergence is that we're always judging, like, without trying to judge.
Yeah,
like
we're always assessing.
It's always assessing. That's a better word for it. Always assessing, but trying not to be judgmental.
You just can't. You can't know where people are at is the thing. And when we're talking about masking, when we're talking about going through life without realizing, you know what I mean? I think brilliance can be called a lot of different things. But I think that you and I are uniquely gifted, uniquely wired, and we're uniquely wired to work together. And I think it's like, one thing I was thinking about earlier today was, I believe I'm 36, right? So I believe it's a little bit of maturity just settling in my heart about this whole topic. But socially, you and I together have been a big surprise to me as well. Like, that was one thing. I think when we were dating and, you know, when I was first getting to know you, I thought that you were probably more outgoing than you were. I didn't realize how much of a recluse you are. Like,
you
just
saw
naturally.
me in all of my hyper focus.
I did. I saw you at your best. No, I mean,
in the midst
cliche.
of my superpower moment before I have to go back and recharge.
You and I have spent a lot of time together, trying to fit in and trying to be
like everyone else.
Basically, to find a commonality with everybody else. We've led small groups. We have hosted 1,000 things.
That's not
just follow my theory.
Okay.
We've hosted a lot of things. We've put the work in to connect with people. But I think in the maturity where I'm at right now, not just because we have 4 kids, not just, but I believe that I'm finally okay with being separate or being unique, being different. And I think that you and I, like, the things that we're discovering together, which is one of the reasons why we started this podcast, the things that we're discovering together that we really love and that work really well with us are just not meant for every social construct. We're meant to be set apart and separated. And I just, when I was
thinking about it, it's okay to be different.
When I was thinking about that, you gotta reframe it.
I think you're just like saying it in more words than it needs to be said, and just like it's okay to be different. We can be different, and that's okay.
We can be different, and I think you and we both really love people. We established that last time. We really love people, but there is a flow and a rhythm that we have, especially together, that is not inclusive of people. Like, we come out, we're we're available, we're connecting, we're loving on people, we're receiving, these social connection moments, but then we really do have to retreat.
Yeah.
And I would say, I don't know what percentage it would be, but I've learned to just see our retreat as a beautiful and right thing for us. And I think that's where maturity comes in, because before, for me, chronic people pleaser for a lot of my life, I would seek to just live up to a standard that was outside of myself.
Right. And
I think I'm just so happy with where we're at, and so satisfied with our retreat.
Yeah.
So satisfied with, hey, this is what we're passionate about. We really don't need to prove ourselves to anyone, because we are strong together, and we have something special here. We have gifts that are interacting really strongly. We're hitting our stride. But a lot of what we are is not run of the mill, or it's not necessarily intended to be in this place that I just always thought I needed to live up to.
Yeah. For me, I've seen it as this just finally coming to the point of saying it's okay for us to not be like everyone else, but also it's okay for everyone else to not be like us.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of both sides of that coin that we had to walk through.
Expectations,
But, right, so it's like on one half feeling broken because we're not like everyone else, being neurodivergent. But then the flip side of that, in the things that we really care about and we're passionate about, and that other people aren't, having to mature enough to say,
yes,
that's just us, right? And that can just be for us, and we don't have to judge other people for not being interested the way we're interested in these things, the way we can hyper-focus or deep dive or, rabbit hole or whatever into certain things that other people are like, well, whatever, doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not really curious. They're like, this is so amazing, this is groundbreaking, it's going to change your life. And you're like, wow, well, doesn't mean anything to me, and we're like, what's the matter with you? And having to like get to that point of being like, we're just different, we're wired differently, and that's okay.
We are. And I think the way that we're wired, we really love people, we've made that clear, but the way that we're wired is when we're on and we're out in the world interacting with other human beings, it doesn't take a lot for me to be interested in the most random topics. Like I will talk to you about how you, I don't know, made a pineapple upside down cake and you did it wrong 2 times and then you try. I'll talk to you about a lot of stuff and I'll be interested and I'll ask a lot of questions. I'll ask you how you felt about it. I'll ask you what the personal journey was.
Right.
But I don't think that our friends who are
neurotypical,
I just don't find, not necessarily our friends, I just don't find that a ton of people who aren't also neurodivergent will reciprocate. Do you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
In the topics that we're interested in.
Yeah.
Or in the topics that we're deep diving on currently.
Yeah, not often.
Yeah. But we do have several friends that will go deep with us, and I'm so grateful for that.
Right.
And it's not a matter of love either. It has nothing to do with love.
Which is what it did feel like for a long time.
It did feel like that. It felt like rejection.
It felt like rejection, and you just don't care about me because you don't want to deep dive into my life. But I think it's also this... I think it's this level of like personal space and boundary too. So like
what are boundaries?
Some people that I'm finding like neurotypicals are wanting where they define boundaries is different than where we define boundaries.
Yes.
Right. And so for us, information doesn't feel like something that needs boundaries somehow. Like for most of us neurodivergents, information is just information, right? Like, so someone wants to ask you a deep question, it's like, oh yeah, well, let me just feed that up to you. It's like I'm just opening the file cabinet and handing it to you, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, here you go. Here's the whole thing. And
right.
and sometimes it's like, I can't believe you said all that. Like, wow, that's so personal. And you're just like, it's just information, whatever, But things like emotions, at least for me, like that's a foreign, like deep, I don't think I can go there and talk about that. Like that's weird, you know. But then for neurotypicals, it's not that way. Like sometimes like a story and, you know, your history or, you know, whatever is like that information's something
sacred for
sacred. Yeah. Like I gotta protect
for
that
one reason or another. Yeah.
And hide that. And I'm not going to share that, you know, and it's just so different.
Yeah. That's such a good point, because with us, information is free.
Mm-hmm.
With neurotypicals, information is expensive. Yeah, and I think that's a really good summary, because I mean that explains a lot of my social problems over the years. Like shocking people with
what you say,
unnecessary information. Yeah,
right.
And
or what's another one we hear? You're like, you're so blunt, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can't believe you're so blunt, and you just say all of it.
Can't believe you just said that, Molly. Like,
just lay it all out. It's like, why wouldn't you ask me the question?
It's true.
I gave you all of the answers. It's 100% factual.
It's true. Why not talk about it openly?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, people's individual sensitivities and boundaries, you know, boundaries are created and constructed from a lot of different places too. And that's a whole huge conversation about where people came from, you know, genetics, family dynamics, on and on, about like why their boundaries exist. But we have such an incredible church community, for instance. And I feel like that's one of our huge social touch points. Because we invest and they are family. Like every single person there is important to us, and I totally mean that 100%. And we have built so much history with them, and you know, history where we've been in crisis together, history where it's just been in passing every Sunday, you know. And I know this person's face, but I don't know their name. But but it's history because we're consistent. We're showing up together.
What a neurodivergent thing, though. It's like, I remember where you take your dog to get groomed, because you told me that story one time.
Yes.
But I still don't remember your name.
Yes.
Like, I remember the color of your dog's collar and the place you take him to get groomed and like all the specifics. I remember the story about your aunt's niece, you know, whatever, and like all this weird off the wall information of the story, but I still don't remember your name.
That's right.
Still love you, but I just have no idea what your name is.
Yeah. And I have to say, it's
on the tip of my tongue, but it never comes.
I mention our church family because obviously it's like a melting pot of people, and a lot of Christians, non-Christians don't often give enough time and consistent like attendance to church. Like a commitment to a church body is so right and so good, not just because it's biblical, but for us, for instance, it has given us a chance to be loved in a lot of different ways. And people have shown us love in so many ways that we wouldn't have received anywhere else. And they all have their own languages, and they all have, you know, obviously their own backgrounds and personalities. And just these sweet touch points we've had have been so meaningful.
It's interesting to me that you had pointed out earlier, small groups, like almost in the light of that being us trying to mask or, you know, and be normal. But to me, I'm like, that is the exact opposite, because it is such a neurodivergent thing to say, let me be the teacher
of this very specific topic.
I am very well versed because I read this book last week.
No, I'm not as bad as that.
I have mastered the information.
That's your thing. That's your last minute Larry study at midnight for your test the next day.
That's an ADHD thing, okay?
Yeah. So I told your mom one time, because your brother, for instance, and his wife express their neurodivergence differently than we do, and they're actually super popular. I would call them popular kids, and they built a really strong small group of like 20s people in their 20s, and they had like a strong community or stuff. They were the popular kids, right? And I'm like, how are they so successful? Anyway, but for us, like, I remember telling your mom, I just really think that Brett and I are too niche to be popular. And she didn't understand what I meant. It's okay, though. It's okay.
It's all right.
I'm like, we're a little far out. We're just, our interests are too niche. Our personalities are... Anyway.
So where have you seen... our even like past, right? Our greatest conflict of our neurodivergence in marriage. Our greatest
conflict?
Yeah, in marriage. Where is our neurodivergence really clashed the most with each other? We've seen, and you know, we've gotten over that, or we've been working through it. I can think of a couple right now.
I would say it has to do with our core fears that we went through, Bob and Audrey.
Interesting. Core fears and neurodivergence. Tell me what you think there.
Brett and I went through some marriage counseling. We went to a 3-day intensive. It was incredible.
It was really, really good.
In beautiful Arizona with incredible marriage counselors. And
highly recommend it to anyone.
I highly recommend.
It's not like we were like in dire straits or something like that, which I think a lot of people wait. Like they think that's what that's for.
Yeah.
It's like they wait until they think there's no other alternative. I'm on my last straw, you know, and we weren't on our last straw.
Or somebody stepped out in the marriage, or somebody, you know, there was a great
something major happened.
Yeah,
and we weren't. We were just like,
no.
I think we could still be better.
Well, that's what we do.
Typical neurodivergence.
No. Okay. We need to stop saying that word. It's bugging me. But yes.
It's overstimming you?
That's what we do. No, we seek information.
Yes. Constantly.
To fill the capacity we have, and then we simmer on it, and then we're ready for more information, and we seek more information. And it's not because one of us is creating a capital offense. It's just because. But anyway, we were at this 3 days intensive where we talked a lot about a lot of things, and we wouldn't have done this with just anybody. Bob and Audrey Miser are incredible. And we went through our core fears, and Brett and I had 3 similar ones, didn't we? Was it 2 or 3?
2.5.
Of the same.
One of them,
half a core fear?
One of them was like, I just barely checked, but it was a strong one for you.
Barely
so anyway, 2 of them, there were 2 for sure that we had.
Fear of rejection.
And fear of
abandonment.
Yes.
Those 2 have been, I think, our biggest, because, well, you all, everybody's listening. Anybody could probably imagine what a funnel that can be created from, like, fear of abandonment. We're both just worried that the other person is going to walk away from us. And then...
and that being... like gasoline on the fire.
Yes.
That we are both ones that need the recharge time to like pull back and recharge. And so that sometimes that I need to pull back and recharge can feel like walking away or abandoning. And it's like that can trigger the very essence of the neurodivergence of like, okay, I've overspent, I need to recharge, can trigger that feeling. Especially when one or both of us are low already. So it's in the
place of vulnerability.
Right.
If we're both feeling vulnerable, if we're both feeling like our tank is empty, and since we share those 2 core fears, we would often butt heads, or we would often like just arrow to the heart without realizing what we were doing to the other person. And without our own personal needs being met. So if I had a fear of abandonment, I would be worried that in your retreat, like you were saying, you were just wanting to walk away from me and not be around me, and that would hurt. So my need didn't get met of, I need someone to show me that I am still loved and that I am worthy of being pursued in this moment of vulnerability, even though I can't perform for you right now. And you would just be wanting to recharge in your own vulnerability. And so it would put pressure on both of us to overperform instead of our own needs being met. And it's interesting because apparently other couples aren't like this. Apparently other couples don't have the same core fears. So when they're low in one, the other one can actually pull them up out of the ditch.
Right. It's not often that they match.
Yeah. It's not often that they match. So they can actually play off of each other and not have this chronic cycle of needs not being met. But for Brett and me, I think we just find ourselves in the ditch when we have those needs being expressed at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think it's very much like the core need and desire of a neurodivergent to say, am I going to be lovable and am I going to be pursued when I'm not on? Right? Because the part of me that's not performing and not on, that's not like, hey, right? When I'm in that retreat, feels like the real me in many ways, right? And that part of me, are you going to actually love me still? That part of me, the part that can't be on and be everything that you need me to be, you know, because I'm, you know, reading the moment and overperforming. It's like when I'm in the retreat moment and I'm not doing, will I be loved? Will I be, you know, desirable, you know, or are you gonna want to keep your distance from me, you know, until I can put it back on again? And so then it's interesting how that, which is very much a core desire, need, you know, in the neurodivergence, is also like playing into this fear of abandonment thing, right? So it's like double whammy, like cyclical. And I think we realized in ourselves too, just that, I don't want to say like perfectionistic, but there's very much this drive to always do better and perform better, right? And it can get like so serious.
Yes.
Right? Like the fun can get sucked out of the room because we're like just trying to be so much, we're going to be better.
I think Brett and I have been prioritizing fun so much more after this stinking intensive, because that in itself is a life goal for us, because it's that hard.
Yes.
For us to have fun.
You know, it's bad when you have to plan to be fun, right? Like, because it can default to not, like, to just be like, work. Let's analyze. How did we do last time? All right, we're going to do better. We're going to do twice as good next time. It's like, whoa. Guys.
Bring
it down.
Yeah. And I totally resonate with the performance thing. And, you know, it's so hard to narrow down when all this happened, how it happened, how you established these core fears, how it came into your heart that this truth is true now, and even though it's not true. And the performance factor has been a huge part of my life, and the people pleasing. And you know, I just have memories of like people just calling me great names, like you know, you're so beautiful, you're so cute, like, as say we all got dressed up, went to church on Sunday, and then all the nice church people with their mayonnaise casseroles were like, you're so cute, your little dress or something, and just feeling like such a fraud somehow, because I didn't want to be what she said, and I didn't, like, it was so short-sighted, and it was but what the moment demanded was that I just be quiet and smile.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just, again, that internal world was just in constant conflict. And I think not having my internal world reconciled and living in a transparent, authentic outer world created this, I just have to keep achieving and performing and people pleasing in order to get by, because nobody's ever going to understand me. Yeah. And also, and we even, like, I remember us talking about this, like, in our first year, even just dating, maybe. I think we were just dating and just saying that, like, one deeper than that is not just to get by, but who is even the real me? Like, I'm not even sure who I truly am or really am, because I've been putting on, like, this mask, you know what I mean? I've been showing up the way everyone else wants me to for so long. I feel like, I remember we had this conversation of saying, like, I feel like I could be 6 different personalities. You know, I could be this for this person, that for that person group, and this for that friend group, and I could just, like, I'll just transform into whatever that friend group needs, and then thinking at the end of the day, like, but who am I actually? Like, genuinely, who am I? Right? Because I don't know anymore, because it's always in response to
I'm
what
always
the moment
just
is.
Like becoming whatever that group needs. And so who am I authentically and legitimately?
Did you ever hear of that book Sybil? I think it's called Sybil.
No.
It was about a true story about this woman who had 12 personalities. I remember reading that book. And she would, obviously, it is probably some demonic thing, who knows, but she would literally slip into each personality, and each personality would live its own life.
Yeah. It's not like that bad, but
it's schizophrenia, whatever, just this fractionated personality where she would jump every 5 years or something like that into a different personality and then go back to the other personality. Anyway, when I read that, I actually really related to that person in that book. I didn't tell anybody that I did because it's, schizophrenic. And then didn't have a fully formulated thought to present to someone to prove that I was not crazy. And I related to that because, yes, there's so many different sides to Molly that just showed up to deliver what was expected, and the sad part is nobody really cares. Nobody's really out to create this reality for Molly that she needs to fit into. I think everybody really would be fine with Molly as I am coming to the table. But there is an unspoken expectation just to be easy. Right. Not a hard person to get along with.
Sure. But I don't know, like, I don't want to speak for you, but I'll just even speak for myself. It took a while into my adulthood to really get to the point of understanding who I am. Because it took getting to this place of being able to separate and or find a safe enough environment to explore who am I, because I've only ever shown up as something for someone else. Yeah. Right. And so who is the genuine me, and then finding that finally was like, well, who's sitting before you now? And that was like, it was so nice. Like, it was so grounding to find like who I am, who God's created me uniquely to be, that was so grounding and didn't feel like being an imposter anymore. Right. And slipping on a mask and, to be for other people, which wasn't always comfortable for other people then, because then they're like, you're not who you used to be.
Yeah. But I just remember, lots of conversations where I was like, you can be honest with me. Like, I was the one hammering for authenticity. And I think that's why we were such a good fit too, because you were the safe place for me as well. And I could say anything and it wouldn't.
It's just information.
It's just information. Yeah. And I really appreciate that, because we've grown a lot together in the last 10 years. We're going to celebrate our 10th year anniversary in March.
Happy anniversary, babe.
Thanks. And we've grown a lot in 10 years, and we've had a lot of these like moments of realization, and I think it's just really important to celebrate where we're at, for sure. Yeah. But oftentimes I would overhype to what this meant when you're talking about showing up, when you're talking about performing. I would overhype other people's expectations on me too. And I don't know if that's a thing or a symptom or whatever, but I've realized that, like, I literally have realized that people really don't give a crap. Like, they don't.
In what way?
They don't care that, if I do one thing or another, they don't care. And that's the thing is, like,
So that what you realize is they're not actually expecting you to show up with 110% like you were.
Right. Exactly.
If you showed up at 50%, they'd be okay.
Yes. They would be okay. Right. Because that's the level that they expect for themselves, or because that's just the level that they expect for anybody. Right. And I don't know why there's this truth that I hold, but I believe it's linked to autism, that I just need to show up at 110%, contribute all I've got, give all I've got, and, and I don't always do it grudgingly either. That's how I have fun too, in a lot of ways, but it's linked to people pleasing. So.
Yeah. Not knowing how to fit in other than showing up this way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think another one that's been an interesting thing to overcome especially in our marriage, with both of us being this way, is short-term memory.
Oh, no, let's talk about executive function. That's on my list.
Executive function, forgetfulness.
Oh my gosh. So this is the big one for me with autism is many women with autism experience problems with executive function. And I took notes here, but
I mean, that's all neurodivergence.
It's a set of skills that involves working memory. right?
Or short-term memory.
Flexible thinking, and self-control. People with executive function problems might find it hard to organize themselves, finish tasks, and maintain emotional control. So executive function, and there was this class that I took as a teacher talking about how to help children get into their executive function brain. And oh my gosh, I was like taking notes for myself. It was very embarrassing. But executive function in the brain is a challenge for me. It really is.
For both of
And
us.
it shows up in so many different ways.
Yes.
My house will be an absolute disaster, but it will stress me out. But I don't know how to fix it. And I don't care enough to fix it. There's this free-spirited side of me that just like lives in the mess, and it's fine. My closet's always a mess, but it stresses me out. And then there's the finishing of the tasks, and there's the forgetting my memory. Like,
Right.
I'm really wanting my memory to heal. Let's be honest. Like, that has been a point of prayer for me.
You start a task, and then something happens. A kid calls or something, and you turn around to do something else, and then that task has been forgotten without trying to. Right? It's like the orange juice and the glass are sitting on the counter unpoured. And you've walked away, and you're into something else now, and then it's like, oh yeah, and then I go back and it's like, oh shoot, look at that, So like, I'll just quick. One of my friends posted this. Who was like, I went to this morning to rewarm my coffee, to open the microwave to find my mug still full of coffee from yesterday when I went to warm coffee and forgot, and now I have these like 2 mugs of coffee. I was like, that is it right there.
This is stressing me out so much right now.
That is it.
Motherhood, fatherhood, motherhood and fatherhood,
right?
Parenthood is full of interruptions.
Oh, constantly.
It has been one of the hardest things to parent through this.
Yes.
Because, and I'll share this really quick, and you can share your side because I know you've got your side. It all starts when they're born. You're trying to establish day one. Like literally the pattern, the schedule of nursing, naps, all of that, diaper changes. It takes a lot of short bursts in order to get through a day, right? And in your executive function brain, trying to create a schedule or create windows of opportunity for yourself to actually get anything else done throughout the day was very challenging for me.
Not to mention the routine. Like, kids, especially young kids, need consistent routine, and a consistent routine and a neurodivergent brain don't go together.
No. And, well, another point of that is then when your kids grow up, they're also forgetting their coffee in the microwave, so to speak. They're setting things down. The house is a disaster because they will put anything anywhere and they'll forget about it, and then they'll find it later, and then they'll be so happy. But I believe that's a natural thing for kids, but we are also probably raising little neurodivergents, so we're a house full of short-term memory challenged people. And so as the mom, am left with who's going to create the structure. And that's what I've put that on myself. And if you forget your coffee in the microwave, I'm the one to take it out, wash, or put the mug in the dishwasher, or I feel like I'm constantly trying to create structure for other people that I also need for myself. Right.
Or like when
I need a mom.
When the doors get left open, and
the cabinet doors is a big thing.
Or the car doors, or
literally the sliding door on our car overnight.
Someone's going, oh look, those are open still. Let's close that. It's just like there's the things that just click, they fly off the radar.
Yeah. And you're constantly cleaning up my messes. So
yes.
One of Brett's big things is security, and I will literally forget to shut the door on my car.
It used to be the door in the house too.
Okay. And then it will stay open all night. Yeah. And he thinks, oh my gosh, was her wallet in the car? Was it stolen? Oh my gosh. What else has been compromised by the thieves? We had some break-ins in our neighborhood, so it's totally justified. But you're constantly cleaning up my messes, and I'm constantly cleaning up yours. Like, what is this? What is that?
Partnership.
It is literally messy.
Yeah.
And that's, to go back to your original question, is a huge point of frustration and tension for me.
If we allow it to be.
I ebb and flow with it. It depends on where my temperament's at that point. But it is a very, potentially disastrous combination.
For sure. Yeah. But, we pushed through it anyway. Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of things, obviously, we've learned. And I know it was like a moment for me in realizing I was neurodivergent when they're like, yeah, they don't have short-term memory. It's why like we recommend having like a notepad and like you keep your short-term memory on a
so
notepad.
Much better at that.
And I was like, that's why I have 20,000 notes on my phone. That's it. That's why I'm like
you've gotten great at the alarms.
Obsessed with the notes and the alarms to like compensate, And then obviously we started getting into like nutrition and like realizing what are the like, probably in the next episodes or two, whatever, we'll get into it. But like we've been finding ways to get through that, right? Rhythms and practical ways of like compensating for our, the areas that we lack, and then how can we like really double down on our strengths. And I think we've finally like started to figure that out, like how to work that balance.
And it's been a huge area and challenge for me to love Brett through these frustrating things that are just a stinking mirror image of myself, and also love myself through them, and not get tripped up by, I mean, this is potentially a little thing that we're talking about, but it's a big thing in our world. The common ways that we cross over in these like challenges. No, but that's been a huge area of growth, I think, for me. Yeah. It's
been interesting.
Yeah. So we can dip into nutrition another time.
Yeah,
we can dip into some more parenting.
Bunch of other stuff we'll touch.
Yeah.
But
sounds good.
Anyway, thanks for joining us today as we've just kind of been wandering about through neurodivergence and parenting and marriage and what all that entails.
And actually, I was just thinking, I know our story probably reminds a lot of people of their own lives. If you have any questions or even comments, you can reach out, and we would love to hear if our story is relatable or not. And
if you're married to a neurodivergent, I would love to hear your stories.
Double neurodivergent.
Or if there's any doubles out there too. Yes, please let us know.
All right.
See you next time on Let's Be Curious.